So Ed Warner is out as offensive line coach, and Ron Bellamy is in, a familiar name on the field in his playing days as a Michigan wide receiver and now wide receiver coach.
Yeah, and it's still a little unsure. They haven't announced if he's the wide receiver coach or tight ends coach yet. But Sharon Moore, who was the tight ends coach for Michigan, he was a top 5 recruiter for Michigan, has now moved into the offensive line coach / co-offensive coordinator. So with Ed Warner leaving, it was a bit of a surprise. He really has done well at Michigan in terms of developing his offensive line. They put 4 guys into the NFL draft after the 2019 season. And then it was a tough go in 2020 because of injuries. Jalen Mayfield, who's a future first rounder, was out for a while. But he had done a great job at Michigan. And so a little bit surprising to see his exit. There's a little speculation on whose side it was from. If it was Michigan, seeing him out the door, or if he put himself out the door. But as it looks right now, Josh Gaddis is he is the offensive coordinator, and he will probably be taking care of the wide receivers as he has in the past. Sharon Moore is the offensive line coach, and then the co-offensive coordinator, Mike Hart, running backs coach, Ron Bellamy, tight end / wide receivers, and then Jim Harbaugh, probably the quarterbacks coach, which for the first time at Michigan, Jim has not had a passing coordinator / quarterbacks coach. So it will be interesting to see how he handles that. But as you can tell there, a lot of young faces on the offensive side of the ball, and then on the defensive side of the ball as well. You've got co-defensive coordinators, Mike McDonald and Mo Lindquist from the Baltimore Ravens. And then Sean Nua on the defensive line still, Brian Jean-Mary at the linebackers position. George Hilo came in as the safeties coach. And then Jay Harbaugh, I believe, is going to move to special teams. But you've got the majority of those guys in their 30s. So it's really interesting to see what Michigan and Jim Harbaugh is doing by bringing in a bunch of young guys to rejuvenate, re-energize. You and I talked about how Michigan kind of went into this lull. They were lacking the fire and the intensity and the culture. So it looks like Jim's trying to re-energize that, trying to bring that back a little bit. We'll see how it does. But what it does present is that now, two coordinators on both sides of the ball, co-coordinators. 3 out of those 4 have never called plays in their life before. And the 4th is Josh Gaddis, who is just in year 3 of calling plays. So how does that work with lack of experience versus the rejuvenation or the fire, the youth? It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But it does seem like Jim Harbaugh has taken a pretty big gamble on some of these young guys instead of bringing in some guys like we talked about with Will Muschamp or Derek Mason, those types of guys who have been proven, especially at the coordinator position, to be successful in the past.
Justin, anytime I hear the term co-coordinators, I think, okay, this spells trouble because there could be a power conflict unless the head coach in this instance is very clear about responsibilities. But the coordinator who gets to call the plays on Saturday seems to be the guy, not necessarily in charge, but that seems to be I don't want to call it the fun part of the job, but the results-oriented portion of the job. Of course, the preparation is huge, but the guy calling the shots on game day seems to be the guy.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It's a too many cooks in the kitchen type situation now, and you're giving out, So they basically said, all right, we're not going to have experienced guys, but we're going to have a lot of inexperienced guys with their hands in it, So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But I could see it as, if it were to go downhill, then, everyone's kind of blaming each other a little bit. You're wondering, should we actually get this guy to call the plays instead of the guy that's doing it now? It definitely doesn't present a straight and narrow path to what you want to get to. It kind of jumbles up everything, and it makes everything a little disorganized, I think. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I would say, like I said, it's a big gamble. It really is. He's putting his trust in these guys that don't have any experience at all. And, Mike McDonald on the defensive side comes from his brother's team in the Baltimore Ravens, but he was the linebackers coach. So you're going from position coach. You've got a lot of position coach guys going into coordinator roles. And so it's not only a heightened responsibility with the development and the title and all that stuff, but then you put in the play calling on Saturday, which is interesting to me because on the recruiting front, so these guys are all great recruiters, and that is what Michigan looks like they're trying to go. But recruiting hasn't been the problem for Michigan, right? They've been in top 10 classes year in and year out. It's been that player development and then translating it to wins on Saturdays. So that's where I struggle to see what Jim Harbaugh's plan is. And instead of getting guys in that can develop players and have a great game plan on Saturday, he's getting guys in that will light up the recruiting trail. I expect Michigan to jump into the top 5 here in the next few classes, honestly. But then how does that translate to Saturdays? How does that make this into wins? Can those coordinators now and the play callers now actually put together a great game plan for Michigan to, go out and eventually beat Ohio State, which is the ultimate goal?
And again, it's not that the co-coordinator process or approach can't work. It can work. It just has to be very clearly defined in terms of responsibilities, because regardless of how well you define it, you got to have 2 mature individuals, because there are going to be times in which responsibilities overlap, and there has to be a decision made by somebody. And if they disagree, there has to be a decision made by somebody. And the one situation like that comes to mind is that the 2018 Ohio State defense was loaded with NFL talent, but statistically was the worst Ohio State defense in forever. Mm-hmm. And they had Greg Schiano and Alex Grinch, who by themselves, nobody is going to question their qualifications or abilities, but you put them together and they had a mess at Ohio State, at least a mess at that level. And they gave up a ton of points, even though they only lost 1 game.